Tolerating Uncertainty, a path through the fear of the unknown. I'm Ben Rufana, recording the second in a series of videos for today, mainly because I'm leaving the country soon for a month, flying out before long, and I just need to get this completed. Also running on just a few hours of sleep, so bear with me. Because I'm working on this series of very in-depth articles, I will, as I've mentioned in other videos, like community journalists and academics, I will be reading from the article itself because it's just way more than I can possibly remember. So with that said, let's dive into it. Uncertainty can feel incredibly threatening, especially for those of us with anxious attachment styles. It's not just uncomfortable, it can be excruciating. The agonizing sense of not knowing often triggers intense fear and self-doubt, sending our minds spiraling into a storm of worst-case scenarios. We often overanalyze text messages, replay conversations, and ask ourselves, what did she or he really mean by that? We obsess over silences, craving constant reassurance. In these moments, fear and imagination take over, leaving us feeling needy and irrational. Much of this stems from how our nervous systems have been wired to equate ambiguity with danger. At the core of this struggle is often a profoundly deep fear of abandonment. Many of us grew up in environments where emotional attunement was inconsistent or entirely absent. Love, if it even existed, may have been conditional. Presence and safety often felt unpredictable. For those of us who were subjected to verbal, emotional, physical, or sexual violence, the threat felt even greater. As children, we adapted by becoming acutely aware, developing a kind of hypervigilance. We watched closely, learned to read our parents' or caregivers' moods to sense the energy of any situation we found ourselves in, and to respond in whatever way we needed in order to survive. We learned to brace ourselves, anticipating whatever might come next: criticism, explosive anger, physical assault, sometimes interspersed with fleeting moments of love, kindness. Uncertainty wasn't just unpleasant, it was the prelude to loss. That early programming shaped how we respond to ambiguity. We carry the same vigilance and fear into adulthood, scanning for cues, clinging when connection feels threatened, and doing everything we can to avoid the unknown, because the unknown never felt safe. As adults, we carry these imprints into our romantic relationships. We interpret delays in response or changes in tone as signs of rejection. Our minds spiral. Do they still love me? Are they losing interest? Are they going to leave? And when clarity is absent, fear doesn't just creep in, it takes the reins, driving our thoughts, emotions, and actions. But the problem isn't only the uncertainty itself, it's our relationship to it. From a neurobiological perspective, uncertainty activates the brain's threat detection system. If you're already predisposed to anxious attachment, this creates a cascade of physical and emotional responses: racing thoughts, creating anxiety, fears of imminent loss and abandonment, a pounding heart, a tightening chest or gut. You're no longer grounded in the present, you're caught in a storm of imagined futures and unresolved pasts. And in our ever-changing world, uncertainty pervades nearly every aspect of our existence. Text messages go unanswered. People drift in and out of communication. Our work, health, and even economies and geopolitical landscapes are subject to rapid, unpredictable shifts. If we don't develop the capacity to sit with the unknown and to digest both current events and our own lived experiences and emotional responses, we're often left feeling anxious, fearful, overwhelmed, and out of control, forever chasing a sense of security and stability that remains just out of reach. It's natural to seek reassurance, and at times it's necessary. But when our survival feels dependent on someone else's constant reassuring words or actions, when we can't feel at ease without confirmation that we're safe or still loved, our fears, anxieties, and catastrophizing mind continually undermine us. It's important to understand that no amount of external validation can fill the internal void left by unresolved abandonment and other traumatic wounds. Reassurance may offer a momentary sense of safety and comfort, but it rarely brings lasting peace. What we need more than answers is our own inner stability, the capacity to tolerate ambiguity, uncertainty, and not knowing without becoming overwhelmed. Over time, and by making use of the most effective practices and therapeutic interventions, it is possible to transform our relationship with uncertainty. Healing doesn't mean we stop caring. It means we become less ruled by our fears of loss and other potential threats, and more accepting of the ebbs and flows of human connection. I've experienced this shift in myself and have observed it taking place in many of the people I've worked with. As we do the inner work, something begins to change. The body softens, the nervous system becomes less reactive. We're no longer gripped by every silence, delay, or ambiguous response. Many who struggle with uncertainty experience overwhelmingly powerful feelings of anxiety, often coupled with an intense fear of loss. These feelings are frequently rooted in experiences of abandonment. They're not just mental or emotional, they're deeply somatic. People often carry extraordinary amounts of painful emotion in their bodies: anxiety, fear, grief, sadness. But because they can't fully access or thoroughly digest these emotions, they find themselves invariably driven by them. It becomes a compulsion, an addiction, and at times it can feel as though they're possessed by these emotions. While there may be some awareness of the emotional turmoil shaping their words and actions, much of it operates beneath the surface, outside of conscious awareness. This kind of wounding often makes people especially needy, clinging, desperate to hold on. These highly charged emotions create a profound disconnect from their authentic core, the part of them that would otherwise serve as a vital source of inner nourishment. The person they fixated on becomes, in a sense, their lifeline. Losing them feels like dying, and so they respond as if their survival depends on that person's reciprocation. For some, it becomes an incredibly torturous, self destructive downward spiral, one that can perpetuate itself indefinitely. Some eventually do break free, others remain trapped, reliving the same pain through each subsequent new attachment. Psychotherapy, articles, books, and even YouTube videos can offer valuable insights. But insight alone doesn't mean you're doing the deep emotional processing required to heal the traumatic wounds driving your fixation. The fixation doesn't go away because you understand where it comes from. You can still find yourself caught in a pattern of forming romantic attachments to one person after another, each time playing out the same underlying trauma. While the insights I gained through therapy books and later YouTube videos were helpful, they only took me so far. Eventually, I taught myself how to go to the underlying source, to be fully present with the powerful emotions driving the intolerable fears of loss. Here's what I began to do, and what you can begin doing as well. Start by acknowledging exactly what's happening, no matter how uncomfortable or irrational it may seem. Then turn your attention inward. Notice what you're feeling in response. What emotions are surfacing? Can you name them? Rather than pushing them away or trying to make sense of them, allow yourself to actually feel. Center your awareness in the depths of those feelings and bodily sensations. Breathe softly and deeply as you immerse yourself fully in what you're feeling. Let your body show you where the pain lives. Follow it. Stay with it. And as the sensations shift and move, continue to breathe and track what's unfolding. This is how you begin to digest what's been buried. This is how healing begins. Most importantly, it requires consistent practice. Every time we catch ourselves demanding answers or chasing reassurance, we need to pause and breathe from the depths of the discomfort. We breathe into the distance, the inconsistency, the uncertainty, the horribly unsettling feelings, the panic of not knowing if they're going to cut us off or if we'll ever see them again, if they still love us, if they're pulling away, if we're being rejected. We don't try to make the feelings go away. We breathe into them. We let them move through us. And in doing so, we begin to build capacity. We increase our tolerance for uncertainty, and we develop the ability to stay present, even in the face of the unknown. We learn to trust, not necessarily in the situation or the other person, because circumstances can be precarious and the person may not be all that trustworthy. But we learn to trust in ourselves. We begin to develop a deeper inner steadiness and a greater reliance on our own perspective and clarity. It's critical to understand that these kinds of attachment wounds run incredibly deep. Brief meditations like those popularized by apps are never going to facilitate the deep level processing needed to truly heal and transform these deeply wounded parts of ourselves. There were times when I had to breathe from the depths of these overwhelmingly painful emotions for hours on end. And when people say, "Who has time for that?" I respond by saying, well, stop and consider how much time you're wasting holding on to someone who cannot love you. Think of the time you waste playing out the same toxic drama. Time you're not spending connecting with someone who truly matches you, someone who will love you in return. When you're tormented by feelings of uncertainty, it can be so much harder to tolerate the anger, upset, or emotional volatility of others, even when they're being manipulative, abusive, or just acting like an idiot. Because in that state, you're less able to set appropriate boundaries or assert your needs. You're more easily taken advantage of. And if you form an attachment to someone who isn't all that kind, they're far more likely to say and do things that leave you feeling confused, destabilized, and hurt. Back when I was still struggling with this kind of emotional wounding, I would often find myself seeking reassurance, wondering if the woman I'd formed an attachment to still cared, still loved me, still wanted to be in a relationship. I could see, even as the drama was unfolding, that this insecurity was making me far less attractive in the eyes of the woman I had become involved with. That fear based grasping strained my relationships and, in some cases, pushed women further away. These kinds of attachment wounds can be especially traumatic, often stemming from early childhood abandonment. And for others, they may originate during adolescence or adulthood, particularly after a series of painful or traumatic relationships. Either way, the stage is set for a recurring drama of unmet need, longing, and emotional instability. Looking back, I doubt I would have healed were it not for the sessions I received from gifted healers in the Vision Quest, a traditional Native American healing practice that involves fasting alone in the mountains for 4 days and nights without food and water. During the Vision Quest, I could feel an extraordinarily powerful presence descending into my body. As it did, I began to relive my past traumatic relationships in vivid sensory detail. I felt all the emotions I had experienced when those events originally took place. I could feel this presence facilitating a process that enabled me to digest those lived experiences and the emotions bound to them. Simultaneously, it was helping me to build a newer and much healthier foundation within myself. There's no single thing that heals this kind of pain. For me, it was the combination of the intensive meditation practices I developed, the deep tissue body work, the sessions with gifted healers, and the vision quest that made the healing of these attachment wounds possible. Only through this long and at times very painful and arduous process was I finally able to tolerate uncertainty, to let go, to relax, and to allow relationships to unfold organically. No longer gripped by chronic insecurity, no longer needing constant reassurance. As you begin to heal these deeply rooted wounds, you're also building a strong foundation within. And as that foundation grows stronger, you're no longer dependent on another person to be your lifeline. Sure, you may still feel sadness or disappointment if someone doesn't reciprocate or if a relationship doesn't work out, but you no longer feel as though your life depends on their love. The suffering that so many of us experience when dealing with attachment wounds can be horrendous. But when we stop running and begin to embrace the pain, it becomes a profound opportunity, not just to heal, but to truly transform ourselves. As we access our own internal source and develop a stronger relationship with our authentic core, we become more grounded and more resilient. And that opens the door to more mature and more deeply fulfilling relationships because we're no longer trying to control love or cling to it out of fear. But it's not just in relationships. Uncertainty can show up in so many other areas of our lives. Waiting on a medical diagnosis with our mind flickering between hope and catastrophe, or facing financial instability, not knowing how we're going to pay the rent or buy food, or caught in a major transition, such as job loss, a relocation, the end of a chapter of our lives, with no clear path forward, stepping into the vast unknown. In these moments, it can feel like we're standing on the edge of the precipice, with the ground beneath us beginning to give way. During those times in my own life when things have felt uncertain, I have returned to the same principles and relied on the same practices to carry me through. Whether the challenge is health related, financial, or the upheaval of a major life transition, the essence of what I'm sharing here applies. These tools are not limited to one situation, they're universal. While there have been times I've really struggled, times I suffer deeply, and you will too, but by learning to embrace and work with uncertainty, whether it's showing up in your relationships or other areas of your life, you begin to reconnect with your own inner source. And in that space, there are moments of grace, doors open, new opportunities do sometimes present themselves. Our task is to get ourselves into that space of receptivity so we can recognize them when they do. Tolerating uncertainty isn't about liking it, it's about learning to stay with it, to breathe from the depths of it. We become the kind of person who can hold ambiguity, whether in love, health, finances, or life transitions, without falling apart. We come to a place of acceptance, no longer needing constant reassurance to feel secure. We learn to be okay with not knowing how things are going to turn out, to trust that somehow they will, and that ultimately we'll be okay. There are still times, even now, when I find myself feeling unsettled, anxious. Our whole world is changing so rapidly. People are far more distracted and disconnected than ever before. And I find it much harder to capture and hold their attention. Some can also be incredibly flaky. And yet, emotionally, so many are deeply wounded. Their bodies are suffering. Yet, with all the distraction and overstimulation, people are far less self aware, less in touch with what's actually happening within themselves, and far less likely to follow through and do the deeper work needed to truly heal. After all these years of practice, I'm still in the process of teaching myself to embrace uncertainty. And as I do, I become more malleable. The panic gives way to presence. The unsettling fear and all consuming anxiety begin to soften and diffuse. Moments of calm emerge, along with a growing sense of acceptance. In many instances, I still don't have the answers, but I'm no longer consumed by fear and anxiety. I want to thank you for joining me today, for listening to this video. If you haven't already done so, be sure to look below, click like, and subscribe. Do share this video as well with anyone that you feel will benefit, anyone you feel needs to hear this message. If you are struggling with uncertainty, you're caught in fear, fixation, or the torment of not knowing, this is your sign. If you're ready to do the deeper work, the work of healing, reach out, message me, or call me at 332 333 5155. I can work individually, remotely, over the phone, or in person. Thank you again.